Into the camera.
Yeah.
Weird. Okay. Hi, my name is Wally Koval, and I am the founder of Accidentally Wes Anderson. In June, I believe, of 2017, I started an Instagram account called Accidentally Wes Anderson. I started it as a travel bucket list for myself and my wife, Amanda, who is now my partner in crime in all things AWA. Once a day, every day, Wally, you're going to find an interesting place that you would hope to go to one day, and you're just going to post it on Instagram because that's a platform that's familiar to you, and you're going to post what it is, where it was, and when it was built, and you're going to credit the photographer. And you're just going to compile these places. Over the course of 2017 and 2018, the community grew very quickly, and Amanda and I started to go on our own adventures, and we were receiving photo submissions from the community all over the world. We started sharing the more in-depth stories behind each of these photos, and it turned into a book. AWA has had a feature in every issue of Whalebone magazine since February 2020. So it's been a really awesome partnership. I did serve as a judge for the Whalebone photo contest, and it was much more difficult than I expected it to be. From the jump, you think, okay, you're just gonna look at some photos, but it's a lot tighter of a race than I could have thought going into it. I was looking for something that stood out. It was something that caught my eye, that was a little bit different, that was framed slightly differently, or maybe it was from a slightly different perspective. There are certain categories that you're working within: water, film, joy, etc., adventure. How is this kind of evoking that idea of adventure, or whatever the topic was, whatever the category was? One of them that stood out to me, look at this kid. Clementine Cutie. Look at that kid's smile. And the color, the orange, it wasn't like he was working with this subject. He was out and about in this market and happened upon this little girl and somehow got that image out of it. It's what emotions are you pulling out of them that you're able to capture in that moment, especially if it's not someone that is sitting at a studio waiting for you to shoot them, but rather someone that is a stranger on the street. And I'm sure that every single one of these has an insane story behind them, like I'm certain that they do. But the one that I know the most is of this this saxophone chipmunk. The photographer, Meredith, she has been photographing this wild chipmunk for several years, and she builds scenes and sets. And then the chipmunk shows up, and maybe she puts like a little bit of peanut butter on the end of this saxophone, which she has like hanging by a little thread. And then the little chipmunk grabs the saxophone and she captures it in all of these scenes. I think that embodies the idea of delight. A wild chipmunk playing a saxophone, that's pretty solid, puts a smile on my face. Accidentally Wes Anderson, right? It could be accidentally anything, but why Wes Anderson? I've always been kind of touched by his work, and it's been something that has spoken to me, and something about it, the characters, the symmetry, the aesthetic. AWA is this kind of intersection between distinctive design and unexpected narrative. So it's the photo, that's great, but if it's just a pretty pink picture and there's no story behind it, it's not us, right? So it's more than the aesthetic, it's what's behind the facade. But when it comes to the technical stuff, that's where we bring Marjorie into play, because she's the technical one. We just kind of know what we're looking for. This is the one and only Marjorie Becker, AKA the chief adventure photographer for Accidentally Wes Anderson.
Oh.
When we go out on our own adventures to DC, Cambridge and Oxford, South Korea, like we've traveled literally all over the place, and most recently to Antarctica together, so I think to the ends of the earth. And that's content that we have captured for AWA in particular.
When we first get our shot list, I typically want to do a little bit of research on the history. Are there any particular details that are important? Because sometimes that will play a key role, an element in telling that story. I usually walk into the scene and assess it, and oftentimes we're kind of doing two different ways of capturing at the same time, where Wally is doing video and I'm doing photography. We kind of can almost read each other's minds as far as like, what the priority in that moment is. And it's been
Yeah.
a really amazing dynamic that we've developed as a team.
We come together and we're like, did you get the shot? And then we're all like excited and nerding out, showing
Yeah.
each other our phones or cameras.
We always get something that we're all very proud of, and then it's just that moment when we see each other getting really excited and give the thumbs up, and then
or
we're like, okay, we got it, and then we're having fun.
the excited nod from
Yeah.
across the room, like,
I shoot on a Nikon D850, and 90% of the time I use what I call my Goldilocks lens. It's a 24 to 70 millimeter lens, and that's because it's neither too wide of an angle and it's not too close up. It is really just that sweet spot in between.
I mean, I think that there's a number of pieces that go into an AWA shot. Yes, from a Wes Anderson perspective, symmetry is number one, aesthetic, color. I mean, those are all kind of the things, but what we always say is there's something about you know it when you see it. Wes Anderson's sets are so perfectly particular. Every single piece of them is down to, whatever it might be. It's perfectly placed and it's there for a reason. What we're doing is taking an aesthetic and applying it in the real world scenario.
Going back and studying his films that I haven't seen since college has really helped me to think more creatively about framing and perspective, because sometimes even having something a little bit asymmetrical but in an interesting way where then you see a detail coming out of the corner that tells a story and adds whimsy. That's what I'm looking for, is that kind of whimsical feature that's going to make it seem a little funky and fun.
The community itself is evolving. The stories that we're telling together are evolving. The way that we approach a shoot is evolving. There's a bullseye, there's a dartboard, and there's a bullseye of what someone might think is AWA.
Yeah.
But you have to look at the whole dartboard to understand what that thing is and how it exists within each rung, or else you don't have any real perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.